We're ready for the season opener of the 2025 F1 season, but wait, it's not in Bahrain this year. Yes, we are going back to Melbourne as the seasons have started so many times before for the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. This is Turn One Podcast. We're your hosts, Jeremiah
and Thomas.
This race, in my opinion, is by far one of my favorites. I love the track layout. I love the close walls. I know you hate that, and that's what makes me love it even more.
You know, it's not... Let me hit on a couple things here. One, love the scenery. We've talked about this a million times. I'm an atmosphere type of guy. I love it. Us going down to COTA last year and just being involved in that was epic, and I COTA's nice, but it's not in a picturesque place. Let's be very realistic. COTA's out in a farm pasture somewhere with a couple hills. Australia, you've got Albert Park Lake right there in the middle of it. It's a beautiful sight to see. Close walls don't bother me, like Singapore I love and all that. The track is just so obscure. And when I say obscure, if you're a new F1 fan, or even if you've been a fan for a while, go look up the layout of the Australian Grand Prix. It is really unique because it's almost an oval shape, but it has so many little dips and dives and weaving in and out, and there's like one straight section, but really nowhere to get a consistent straight line going. And man, on that video game, that track just messes me up.
We don't have Oscar Piastri. I was going to say we don't have any Aussies. Yes, we do.
And isn't doing an Aussie.
Is he? I think no idea. I don't know enough about Doing yet, which is...
Yeah, Doing's Australian.
All right, we got two guys with the home race this year. I want to jump into the drivers a little bit. A lot of this is going to kind of be based off of...
Oh, wait, hang on. You might have just offended a lot of people. Who else did you say was Australian?
Oscar Piastri.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Liam Lawson.
No,
he's New Zealand. Yeah, okay. We're good. We didn't offend a whole nation. You gotta recover from that. Look, I'm trying to make sure you don't get canceled by the lovely people of New Zealand.
I want to talk about the drivers a little bit, and this is hard just because of the fact that the only data that we have to go off of is the testing, and the testing was in Bahrain. It wasn't even on the Australian track, so we're not really looking at the same thing here. But there's a lot of things to go off of, and I think it's going to be an interesting race. For one, I'm going to do a little bit of comparisons from last year to this year, starting off with the fact that Ferrari went 1-2 last year with Carlos Sainz winning it and Charles coming in second. I think Ferrari's going to come out just as strong this year. I foresee them having a great race. I think they've only made upgrades to a car that was already pretty similar to last year's car, and since last year's car did so excellent at this track, I think we're going to see more of the same. McLaren's the wild card because, of course, they did a whole bunch of testing or changes to their car this year as they decided to go with a completely different plan. It seems to have paid off in testing, but it remains to be seen because it's a completely different track. They have the same driver lineup, so consistency there, but I don't know. It's weird to see. Max DNF'd last year, so we don't really have a whole lot of data to go off of for that, but this year's Red Bull is kind of looking like it's a miss situation of the hit or miss combo there. I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts here. What do you think?
So you call out testings in Bahrain, which is traditional for us. We've gone back in our F1 knowledge to watch historical races and things, but I don't think we've gone back and looked at how they did testing previously to us becoming fans. So that's kind of a blind spot for us. Let us know in the comments if there was a big change ever in how they did testing. But for us, testing is always done in the Bahrain, which is a desert environment. It's dry, it's hot. You're now flipping the page, not starting with that on the race weekend. So a lot of these teams are going to be going off sim data. As far as I know it, Melbourne, Australia is cooler in temperature, much more humid. So that's going to play a factor in it. And I just looked up Melbourne's weather for this weekend. We are sitting in the upper 60s to low 70s, rain all day on Sunday.
Right. So Max is going to have a day.
So if that holds, teams are going from the deserts of Bahrain, where they tested their cars and tried to perfect things, all the way across the world to the southern hemisphere down to Australia, and now it is 50 degrees cooler and raining. Good luck, teams. Figure it out.
Before we jump into kind of what our predictions are going to be for this race, I want to stay on this topic of testing. I want to talk about the back of the grid a little bit more because there's a lot of interesting pieces back here. For
All right, yeah.
one, in my opinion, for one, you had the Haas combo of Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen last year, and they actually, in my opinion, kind of either outperformed the car or that car was a lot better than what a lot of people were expecting because they had a great season. But from what we saw in testing this year, it's not looking good with the combination of Ocon and Behrman. I think Ocon's obviously the stronger driver, and he's been getting better times. But Behrman's kind of been hovering around the back, and Stake is still terrible. That hasn't changed. That is consistency at its finest. Different drivers, same terrible car. No, it's a little bit faster, but it's nowhere near what it
That
should
much
be.
faster.
No. V-carb is still, I would say, about where it should be, right? Not at the worst of the pack, but not really a middle of the pack kind of team yet. They're kind of just in that void. But we've seen some crazy testing. Go ahead.
Real quick on VCarb, I know last season they were very big on that branding, the VCarb thing. This year again,
It's
they are
Racing
using
Bull.
more of your favorite branding of Racing Bulls, and I think we should
love that
incorporate that more.
name. I love that name. It's so good.
That's what's being posted everywhere is Racing Bulls now.
Well, I mean, the car's got this fading bulls and blue on the back of it. Oh, it's so good. Oh, I love their
So
car.
better. I mean, VCarb is a good acronym, but Visa Cash App Racing Bulls was not as good as Racing Bulls.
No, Racing Bulls sounds so good. They should have been that from the start. I know they pushed the whole V-carb thing, and hopefully we hear from the announcers during the races, we hear more of like Racing Bulls and not so much the V-carb thing. The big thing in the back of the field for testing that I really wanted to touch on is two teams. One, the recovery of Alpine, as they are now, according to testing, regularly in the middle of the pack. We're seeing them coming in 8 and 9 and 10 and somewhere in that general vicinity. But even bigger than that, we have seen a massive surge from Williams, and I am all for it. I have been waiting for this. I have wanted this since we started to really dive into the history of Formula One, and we got to see just how impactful Williams has been as a team throughout history. I have been waiting for this driver lineup. We have two solid drivers and an awesome car. I've been waiting for this for a long time, and I think that this season is going to be insane for Williams. I think, in my opinion, they're going to be battling with Alpine and Aston Martin for the 5th spot.
And I think we can get into that if y'all want to stick around for another episode, maybe sometime this week, where
There's a little teaser for you.
We revise our early predictions that we now have seen testing play out, and we've got some thoughts. I agree on Williams. So you and I have talked about this. 3, maybe 4, maybe not quite 4, but at least the past 3 seasons, Williams has produced a fast car. Alex Albon is a fast driver, a little inconsistent, but fast. He's always been weighed down by an underperforming teammate, though. Williams has always had trouble keeping their cars on track, regardless of who the drivers are, including Alex Albon. So it's tough to get real data or metrics out of what their car can produce. If this year they can keep their cars on the track and full throttle those cars, their engineering has never really been the problem.
No, I think it's just been money.
Money and the drivers.
Yeah, they've always had one strong driver and then meh on the second driver, and then the financial crisis that hit Williams so hard. But a lot of the reason why they struggled to stay on track, and we talked about this in previous episodes, is that when Williams came under the new, why am I blanking on his name? Who is the team principal?
James Vowles.
Why is I blanking on that so hard? When Williams came under the leadership of James Vowles, he specifically told all of his engineers, I want you to test everything. I don't care if we fly off the track in every single race. I want to know what the exact limits and capabilities of this team are. And I think we've seen a lot of that these past couple of years as Logan Sargent, Alex Albon, insert driver here, just goes flying off the track every other race in a Williams.
Yeah, and James Vowles, again, learned from Toto. Toto, of course, has perfected how to run a team, for the most part. And if he can replicate that formula at Williams, and you've got to imagine, I don't know how we would find information on this, you've got to imagine the Carlos Sainz coming into the team has brought in more sponsorship money somewhere.
Absolutely. Um, as far as I guess the front of the grid, if we're gonna go continue on with this testing theme, I mean, Red Bulls look kind of weak. That's been a big shocker. I don't really see them being as one of the top people in this race. I mean, Max will always be in the conversation for somebody who might win the race, and that's just because he is who he is, no matter what car he's driving. But I think Liam's going to struggle to keep up with the rest of the teams. Mercedes has looked really strong in testing. McLaren, I hear me out. I think they're sandbagging. I genuinely do. From testing, I haven't seen the results from that car that I was expecting to see, and I think they're severely sandbagging the rest of the teams.
Either sandbagging, or remember you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, how they made some really big changes to the car design for this year. It might take them some time to get those changes dialed in. They're already one of the front runners coming out of testing. If they can dial in that car even more, then who knows where they can go.
I mean, it's just funny because you look back at 2 seasons ago, they were at the back of the grid and had to fine tune their car to be fighting for the front. And then last season, they started, coming in fourth, third, fifth, and then dialed it into where, oh, now Lando has the possibility of winning the drivers' championship. And, it's crazy to see what McLaren can do over the course of an entire season with their car. I mean, I think that their advances and upgrades is way better than, in my opinion, any other team in the past couple of years. I think that they just take that car and they go flying with it throughout the season.
The only we talked about how Australia is the first race this year instead of Bahrain, and I don't mind the schedule changing. I kind of appreciate the schedule being mixed up every once in a while. The one thing I don't care for with the schedule being different is it's very hard to compare like year over year. Like we could go back to Bahrain last year and see how teams did and see how they did this year in Bahrain and know kind of where we're starting from. Now we can't do that because if you go last year to Australia, that's several races into the year, just like Bahrain's going to be several races into the year this year. It's going to be tougher to see, like, you can't predict the next race or the season's results every race weekend because the races are all out of order.
Right, exactly. Do you have anything else for testing, or do you want to go straight into predictions?
No, there's been a lot of media outlets that have posted their rankings of teams, and I think unanimously everybody's got McLaren at 1 and Sauber or Stake down at 10. But in between there, it's kind of a hodgepodge of teams here and there. So it really depends on what people were looking for in testing, and I don't think you or I or the final say in that by any means. Just like you mentioned, you think McLaren could be sandbagging. Some of the media outlets could have also thought that, and some might have thought that that's the best they had. So just a caution to the F1 fans: if you're reading someone's article or post and they're like, "Oh yeah," I'll use this as an example, but Alpine is light years ahead of this year than they are of last year. Maybe,
Yeah.
but testing doesn't show you that because what a team tests might not be their ultimate performance package. It might be them trying to figure out very specific race strategies or tire strategies or pushing the car in limits that don't necessarily play out over the course of a race. So take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. But no, we can get into predictions. What I wanted to do for this, just to keep it simple, is give our podium finishers a surprise top 10 finisher, if there is one to be had, and then who we think is going to do the worst. So why don't you kick us off with who you think is going to do the worst? Let's start there.
I hate to
Team
do
and driver.
I hate to do my man and my team like this. Oh, this is gonna hurt to say out loud.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. I think that who's gonna do the worst in this race, unfortunately, is gonna be Oliver Behrman for Haas.
Wow.
And that hurts
Ouch.
because he hit a Ferrari in 8th place or 7th place, whatever it was, and then he hit two Haas races where he scored points in one of them, and it's just like, man, the kid's got talent. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think A, they're feeding him with a great car, and B, I don't think he has the best mentor. Just my opinion. So we'll see. That's my prediction, though.
Give me one, just kick State to have the worst day by far. They're going to have mechanical failures. Their car is going to be slow.
30
It's
second
not going
pit
to be,
stops.
yeah, it's going to be terrible from the Stake team. Nico is their only hope to ever do anything.
At least you're
So
admitting
there's
that
that. But
now.
I mean, realistically, he's their only hope. Bortoleto, I think he's going to have the worst day. I think Bortoleto is going to finish 20th outside of some other driver having a mechanical failure before. Obviously, that could be the curveball to all this, but in terms of, either finishing or who's going to blow up first, I think it's going to be Bortoleto. No fault of his. I think Bortoleto might be a fine driver. My one worry is that he ends up in the Zhou Guan Yu cycle of always being in backmarker teams and never being to show his stuff. So maybe he can break that straight off in the first race and somehow get a top 15 or 14 finish, which would be really good for that horrible state car. But I think he's going to be last.
Ouch.
All right, surprise top 10 finish. This might not be a surprise, and I'm sorry if this is a bit of a letdown. Give me Carlos Sainz to be in the top 10.
Yeah, let's go ahead and double that up. I think that this was kind of a no-brainer. I think we're riding really high on the Williams wave right now. The whole bringing in of Carlos Sainz, how well the car did in testing. He finished day 2 and actually had the overall fastest lap time of all 3 days. So I just think that Williams is cooking. Carlos Sainz is cooking. He's spreading chili powder all over the track, and he's going smooth operator all around this thing.
We could go more outlandish and do like a rookie driver, but I just don't really see it. And I kind of want to be right. And I think I'm going to be right with that one. So I think you are too.
Yeah, that was my guess. So,
okay, give me your top 3. Go 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1. Number 3, Max Verstappen. Don't count him out. You can count out that Red Bull, but you cannot count out Max Verstappen. He's still coming for that 5th title. I don't care what anybody's saying. He's going to give it everything he's got. He's going to outperform that car. Number 2, give me Charles Leclerc. Give me the kid from Monaco. Give me the 1B, 1A Ferrari driver. I don't know what they do over there. Anyway, and winning this race. Call me bold, call me stupid. Either one might be right in this situation. Give me the man, Lewis Hamilton.
Boy, okay.
I didn't say you'd agree with me.
No, we are so you recap real quick, 3, 2, 1.
Max, Charles, Lewis Hamilton.
Okay. My number 3 on the podium in Melbourne this week. Give me Oscar Piastri in the 3rd spot in the Papaya McLaren car. You're going to like number 2. This is a change up from my original predictions. Lewis Hamilton in the 2 spot. In number 1 to officially kick off their season of dominance.
No.
Lando Norris.
No, and
McLaren going 1-3 the entire season.
We'll give you. I want each of us to have an opportunity here to defend ourselves. I think yours is going to be morally wrong, but maybe statistically right. I don't know. We'll find out. But in the case that McLaren wasn't sandbagging, and that's actually what they're bringing, I think the beginning of the season is going to be rough for them. And if that's the case, I don't even see them on the podium in this first race. I see them getting maybe 4th and 5th, but I don't see them on the podium. I think you can't count out Max Verstappen just because of who he is and how good of a driver he is. Also, with you throwing out the fact that it's going to rain, we're talking about the master of the wets here, the guy who in Brazil dominated the entire race last year on a wet track. And I think genuinely Max is going to get a podium, if not more, and get maybe 2nd and 1st. But I'm still going to go with the fact that, one, Ferrari got 1-2 in Australia last year. The car performs well in Australia. Now, just looking at testing, I've seen that Lewis Hamilton has consistently been beating Charles Leclerc. So that tells me one of 2 things. 1, Lewis is faster in the car, and 2, Ferrari is, as far as testing goes, the fastest car, and also the fastest in Australia if you look at last year. So I'm putting puzzle pieces together here. I'm going to go with Ferrari on the 1-2, and I'm not going to count out Max in the rain. I'm saying he takes 3rd, but there's always a possibility he takes 2nd or 1st.
I think Max is top 5, and I really struggled to not put him in the top 3. He could easily be 3rd, especially with the rain variable in there. I just think McLaren has it, and I'm not a bandwagon fan because I'm not a McLaren fan, but I am a bandwagon in the sense of they have been just on a heater for the past season and a half. And until I see that train get derailed, I am still thinking that it's rolling on like normal.
Yeah, you're rolling,
which it could this weekend. Now, you mentioned a good point. You mentioned that Lewis Hamilton is pretty consistently now outperforming Charles Leclerc. There's also an experience angle to it. Lewis is just a more experienced driver. that is a pretty big switch from where I say big. I flipped them by one, but my way too early rankings, I had Charles beating Lewis. I might be backtracking a little bit on that now, and
Here's a
now we might
teaser.
have Lewis winning. So I go Norris, Hamilton, Piastri 1, 2, 3, and I max somewhere in the top 5, if not the top 3. We'll see.
Okay, solid predictions. I think we covered the worst driver. We covered who we think is going to be in the top 10, and we covered our podium. If any of you disagree with us, if you think that our opinions are absolutely terrible and you want to give your thoughts, let us know down in the comments below. If you think that we're right, give us a like, give us a follow. If you think we're wrong, give us a like, give us a follow.
If y'all think Isaac Hadjar is going wire to wire #1 this season, I might agree with you. Let me know.
We flipped roles. Bye, guys.
We'll see ya.